This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream. The stream I do on Sundays because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Sunday morning. It actually is kind of nice out for once, which is nice. I had a very exciting day yesterday. Some of you were there for the first part of it in my very early morning and impromptu stream after being woken up by my neighbors at the, not even the crack of dawn, it was like the precursor to the crack of dawn. Yes, my trip with my sister to see my folks was fine. It actually went a lot smoother than we thought it would, given the holiday weekend. And we got there, hung out, visited with the folks, had lunch, did a few things, and then came home, and I was home kind of late in the evening last night, but it worked out well. So thanks to all of you who wished me well on my little journey. And with that, good morning. And who is joining me this morning? Well, before we get to that, I have a couple of super chats here. Thank you, Twisted Step Skipster. Oh, Step Skipster, what are you doing? I'm not sure exactly how to interpret that. I could take that a couple of ways, but I'll just thank you, Step Skipster. That's all I'll say, in the absence of a better idea. Also, thank you, Kiever Dam. Have a good time with your family. Hopefully you got some sleep beforehand. I didn't get any sleep beforehand. I fell asleep briefly during one of our little drives after getting to our folks' place. We had to drive somewhere, and I kind of nodded off on the way to lunch. And then I really didn't get to sleep until last night for reals. So, yeah. Because I had a really good time just talking with my sister. I don't get a chance to spend a lot of time talking with her. And so we basically talked all the way there and then on our trip back. So it's kind of nice. But thank you. I have another very important thing to do before moving on with the rest of the show. And that is one of our, part of the scribe tribe. Jamie Melquist has a daughter named Vicky. And Vicky has a birthday today. And so, Vicky, if you're out there, and I'm going to stop the background music for a moment here. Vicky, I'm very glad it is your birthday, and I'm very glad that you're having a happy one with your family. And this one is for you. And a 1, and a 2. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Vicky. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Vicky. Hope you have a fun one. Hope everything's well. And with that, let's get on with the rest of the show. Who's joining me today? Amongst other people. Well, obviously, Twisted Step Skipster, Mike R., Kiever Dam, Ryan R., Noah Essential, Ogai Gamer, Plague Dr. Zach. Who else is here? Bridget, Spittlebuggies. Good morning. Ken Elliott, Shadowclaw, Tyrannus, Alexandrius, Invictus Soul, and Fulkin Kunt. And who else is here? Chat jump, because of course it did. Rotten Corpse, good morning. Funtime Bats. And J2022. And I think that's everybody. If I missed you, I apologize. If you're lurking, good morning. And good morning to anybody in the future. So, what's on the docket for today? Well, we have a virtual roundtable discussion from the Harbor-UCLA Medical Center and their EDIA initiative. That's Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Anti-Racism. Yes, they've gone the extra mile to distinguish themselves from a DEI initiative to now be EDIA. EDIA. I could go somewhere with that, but I won't. So yeah, we have a list of medical professionals and or such to talk to us about advancing equity through community engagement. What does that all mean? I don't know. We'll find out together. There is a little bit of a preamble in this thing. I didn't really trim anything out. I didn't really have time because I was, like last night, I was really tired. And so I just kind of decided what I was going to do for today's show. And then I kind of prepped everything in the last hour or so. So I apologize for if there's a part at the beginning that kind of drags. I don't know how long it drags. I think it's just the lady giving introductions. I don't think it should take too long, but we'll find out. And then we'll learn something. We'll learn how they're going to advance equity through community engagement via medicine, I think. I guess. I don't know. We'll find out. Anyway, the whole thing lasts an hour, but in real time, I'm only going to go about an hour and a half. So there's that. Also, please, if you will, take your gaze, avert your gaze, direct your gaze. How about that? Direct your gaze to the top of the chat box. There you will find links to some GoFundMes for our friend Shady Grin, Angry Illinoisian, and his kitten. So if you have a couple of extra bucks to spare, please do consider donating there. Their friends, their families, and loved ones could certainly use your help. So, with that, let me know if you can hear this, and then we'll proceed. It's going, I think. Right? Yes. Come on, anytime now. Anytime now. There you go.
So hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you, all of our panelists, all of our viewers to this panel on advancing equity through community engagement.
Yay, advancing equity through community engagement. You guys hear that all right? Let me know. Let's see. Anybody else show up that I just didn't get to presently? Roger Reynolds, good morning. Sounds good, says Mike R. Sounds fine, says Keeverdam. Sounds good, says J2022. All right, well, here we go. Oh, I'm noticing a pattern in each of our speakers' titles here. What's this? And this. Oh, somebody didn't conform. He's got it. He's got it. She's got it. I can't really tell, but I'm assuming yes. So we have a rebel over here. We have a rebel.
I will do just a really quick introduction of myself and the organization that I'm here with, Lumos Transforms, and then quickly sort of introduce our panelists as well, and then we'll jump right into these questions. We have a lot of juicy things to talk about today.
Ooh, juicy. I like juicy.
Okay. So my name is Devika. I use she and her pronouns.
I'm so glad to know. I'm really... I was worried there for a second. I also like the fact that her books up here are aligned in the color progression. It goes from red to orange to yellow to greenish to bluish down to purple. That's cute.
I am with Lumos Transforms, and Lumos has been working with DHS for the past over a year and a half on the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Anti-Racism Initiative, the EDIA initiative.
Yeah.
And we are a Los Angeles-based social organization that's really dedicated to shepherding individuals, communities, and organizations through positive change for a more healthy and equitable world.
Wow, that all sounds very, very positive and benevolent. I'm sure there's nothing concerning in any of that. Also, I like this book title up here, Colonize This! I wonder if that's like a sci-fi book of galactic expansion.
So we're really happy, we're really excited to be joining in these launch events as the DHS EDIA strategic plan has just been launched, the first ever.
Oh, it's new? It's brand new. EDIA is brand new, just launched. Okay, so we're on the cusp here. We're on the cutting edge of this new initiative. EDIA. Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Anti-Racism. Oh boy. Also, I think this is a critical race theory book up here, if I'm reading that correctly. All right, boy, we got an interesting pedigree going on.
And we're celebrating this launch. We're excited to talk to all of you about some of these really important equity issues.
Oh, I'm excited to hear about them. And that now that I know that the EDIA initiative is just a relatively recent occurrence, I might be following it up in the future. Yay!
So the purpose of this panel today is to really discuss community engagement and how it can advance equity. And so some of the things that we're going to highlight today are some of the key elements that can really ensure authentic community engagement. We'll talk about challenges and barriers, the role of community engagement in harm repair, the role in leadership, and really paving the way for authentic community engagement. And for those of you who actually got to participate in the strategic planning process in the initiative, to talk a little bit about what that experience was like for you.
As long as it's authentic. As long as it's authentic. And harm repair. I think that's what it was. Harm repair. Oh boy. Harm repair and authenticity. Oh boy. Ostzan. Oh, Nyo. I'm late. Just want to highlight that real quick if I can. Oh no, I'm late. You're never late. You're exactly when you should have arrived. That's all there is to it. That's like Gandalf kind of thing.
Related to community engagement.
Yes.
So I'd like to introduce quickly our panelists today, and I'm doing this in alphabetical order. Okay. So first we have with us here Amy Turk. Amy Turk is the Chief Executive Officer of the Downtown Women's Center, where she oversees all programs and fosters vital relationships with community partners in efforts to end women's homelessness. Okay. She has more than 20 years of experience in the fields of social work and homeless services. Welcome, Amy, and thank you for joining us. Next, we have Andrea Welsing. Andrea Welsing is Director of the County Office of Violence Prevention, where she coordinates a comprehensive county-wide approach to violence prevention across multiple sectors and government agencies. She has more than 25 years of experience working collaboratively with multiple sectors and community partners to develop, implement, and evaluate public health programs. Okay. Welcome, Andrea. Next, we have with us Angel Martinez, who is the Director of Community Engagement for the Community Programs Unit at the Department of Health Services, and a health professional and activist whose work centers social justice and community health equity.
Oh, his nameplate didn't have all that stuff earlier. He added that. Maybe he saw that everybody else had something, so he added the all pronouns. All pronouns? All pronouns. Okay.
Population health, community-based participatory research, public health, health policy, and global health.
Health. Also health. And health.
Welcome on health. Next, we have Anne English. Anne English is the Program Director and Operations Lead for the CSH Speak Up initiative, which creates intentionally collaborative spaces.
Creates intentionally collaborative spaces. Okay.
Where individuals with lived experience of homelessness can share their stories and advocate at the local, state, and federal level to shift the dominant narrative that misrepresents and stigmatizes their experiences. Welcome, Anne.
Okay.
Then we have Diamond Lee, who is the Director of Birth Equity and Community Collaboration for the Los Angeles County Department of Health Services Mama's Neighborhood Program, and
Birth Equity. Okay.
Has extensive experience managing a portfolio of projects that leverage government, philanthropic, and community resources to advance racial justice. Welcome, Diamond. Okay. And then finally, we have with us Tway Wen. Tway is a community member of the Reentry Advisory Collaborative, a program that helps the system-impacted population and strives to reduce mass incarceration, and served as a subcommittee co-lead for the DHS EDIA initiative. He runs a nonprofit dedicated to helping justice-involved individuals have a chance to better themselves.
Justice-involved individuals. Is that what we're calling convicts now? Justice-involved individuals. I don't know that I've heard that one before. Maybe I have. Okay.
Welcome, Tway. And thank you all for joining us in this discussion.
Okay.
All right. Yes. So I'd love to jump into it now. And
I hope you do, because that was a long lead up.
I want to start with this first question, really, that centers around how does community engagement advance equity?
That is probably the primary question based on the title of the presentation. So yes, how does one do the other? And how do you define equity? Now, I always go into these things assuming that equity equity is defined as equality of outcome. So how does community engagement advance equality of outcome?
And in your experience in doing this work, what are some of the key elements or practices that ensure authentic community engagement?
Authentic community engagement. I guess being honest while interacting with the community? Or what?
So I'd like to invite Diamond to speak to this first.
Okay, well, first and foremost, credit where credit is due. Our moderator is keeping things in order. She is directing the question to an individual and cueing that individual to speak. So we're not going to have, I'm hoping, a bunch of crosstalk or a bunch of silence because somebody put a question out into the ether and just waited for somebody to say something. That's the sign of a good moderator, so points to you.
Yeah, this question just makes me think of the definition of racial equity that I like to center.
Oh, a definition? Thank goodness. All right, tell me.
As like a process and an outcome. And the outcome is everyone has what they need to thrive, right?
Everyone has what they need to thrive. Okay, so it varies person to person because no two people are exactly the same. And then we have to get more granular then. What do you mean by thrive?
Right, so we want equity where everyone can receive the services, support, resources to not just survive, but thrive.
Not just survive, but thrive. Okay.
But then to get to that outcome, right, we have to center the process. And the process to get to that outcome is really centering the voices of those most impacted by systemic inequity, racism, etc.
Okay, so you can't get to everyone getting the resources they need to thrive until you first identify those that are most impacted. All right, how do you define those who are most impacted and their voices?
And so when I think about community engagement and I think about equity, we are engaging community to lead things that impact their lives. Those that are impacted need to be centered there.
Those that are impacted. What do you mean by impacted? Like define. You keep saying terms that have no definition and are ambiguous. What is an impact? And then how does that then make someone more necessary to center versus someone else to then move on to who gets what to thrive? So there is a hierarchy, right? There's some kind of hierarchy you're establishing of who are the most impacted. All right, well, define impacted.
And then when I think about like the how and the practices, we have to start with ourselves. I think sometimes we jump to like, let's go to the community. And it's like, actually, how are we in community with each other, within our teams, with our peers, with our colleagues, with, other departments within our organization. Like that work starts with each other first. And if
like what? Like you have an active example, right? I mean, you've been doing this work for X number of years. So walk us through it.
We're collaborating and engaging with each other effectively, then that can naturally translate to authentic engagement with the community. Okay. So I'll stop there.
That's your answer. I mean, I guess the question itself was relatively broad and undefined, so why not have an answer that is similar?
Thank you, Diamond. I'd love to pass it next to Angel to speak to this.
Okay.
Of course. Thank you. And again, thank you for having me. And it's great to be amongst colleagues and comrades and partners. And thank you, Lumos, for having
comrades, you say. Do svidaniya!
Us and creating the space really to think about what does meaningful community engagement mean.
creating this space. You're on a Zoom call. Okay.
I think for me, when I think about meaningful community engagement, it's centering community first and foremost.
I guess that would be a primary component of engaging with the community, is you would have to sort of make the community the center of attention.
And then thinking about what are the core principles that we identify and that we know are important in order to, one, hold at the center community, whether that be our patients or participants, and also humanize that space as well, right? Because while we are health professionals, I am still a brother, I am still a son. My community and the community I live in is still impacted, by a variety of different isms and
Your community is impacted by a variety of different isms. And you're also a brother and a son, and community is centered. What are you talking about?
Disparities.
Disparities? Oh, are there disparities? Well, heck, we have to get rid of all disparities. What?
And community engagement really is thinking about what are those core principles that we're bringing to the table, that we foster, that we say we utilize as a way of holding ourselves accountable, and as well as the work. And we can, there's so many, there's so many core principles that we could look at, whether that's trust and co-creation, co-development, shared governance, all the way through equitable financing and inclusion, right? And so,
okay, I understand that each one of these guests is giving basically a summary answer, I suppose, to a very bizarre question, because now the answers don't seem to be lining up with anything that was asked. It's just, I mean, just like professional word salad. What are you talking about? What do you actually do? Walk us through the day in a life, or a day in a life of what you do. Or like, give an example. Do you have a success story? Do you have an individual or a community that you worked with where it was this way when you showed up, and then through this process, step 1, step 2, step 3, it ended up in this better way? Something like that? Like a bit more grounded than just babble?
Thinking and understanding what those core principles are and how we continue to foster and grow them and evolve them over time becomes really important to centering community and engaging community in a community engagement framework.
That sounded like a bad book report, like a kid gives in elementary school or something. It's like, I read War and Peace, and War and Peace is a very extensive book that deals with the heavy topics of both peace and war. The end.
Thank you, Angel. And maybe Andrea, if you'd like to speak to this question as well.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Lumos, for...
Okay, first and foremost, I am mightily impressed by the sound quality of everybody's webcams, because as you guys know, on most panel discussions, your mileage may vary, and you get some really cruddy sound, and then like some other people sound like they're coming out of a TV studio. So far, everybody, good sound.
For hosting us and for allowing Public Health and the Office of Violence Prevention to be part of this conversation. Mm-hmm. As a newly formed office, I think this idea of authentic community engagement is very important to us. And I do think that authentic community engagement.
You keep saying that word. What does that mean to you? How does that differ from, I guess, regular community engagement? What does it mean?
It does advance equity.
Okay. How?
By the very virtue of, instead of a traditional model or a historical model where especially government institutions and agencies have come into communities with, already developed solutions or an idea of how they want to advance the work or promote health or solutions. What it does is it flips that model and it flips that power dynamic to really say the voices of those who are most impacted are the ones that really need to inform and develop the solutions in partnership with government entities and county entities. So it's not extracting government, but how do we work together? So,
okay, all right. So, authentic community engagement is going to a community, whatever it is, talking to the people in that community about what their issues are, what problems they have, what government can do, and then forming a plan to attempt to address those problems based on the input of the community. That qualifies as authentic. Whereas inauthentic would be just someone initiates something without actually consulting anybody first. Is that the distinction I'm getting here? I mean, okay.
With the issue of violence prevention, which we're focused on, and we know that Black and brown men of color are disproportionately impacted by the issue of gun and gang violence in communities.
Disproportionately? I mean, what is the correct proportion, I guess? I don't know, but okay. And why is that, do you think?
That do not have resources and have not been resourced, those are the voices we need to listen to.
Okay, well, what resources should be dedicated to those demographics? Or what resources are they not getting? I guess. I know she's giving a summary answer, but these are the questions that come to mind. I'm hoping at some point some more details will be given.
And we need to sit at the table and just listen. And I think along the ideas of what are the practices or elements, I think it is a long-term process. It is really going into community engagement with this idea that it's about developing relationships. It's about sitting back and listening. It's about understanding what's already in place and acknowledging that. It's about acknowledging our historic role in causing harm and understanding that the mistrust that's there, we're going to have to overcome, but we're going to also have to be accountable. I also think, and I'll stop in a minute, because I don't want to take up too much time, but as we think about authentic community engagement, I think we have to go several layers down on that and really understand the practices of where do we go, what are the tables where we're creating, are we going to other people's tables, who's not at the table, who's most impacted, and really ensuring that even with community-based organizations at the table, sometimes we have to go deeper, like who's not at the table and why.
The table. Okay, can you give me an example of a community, just like one that you've worked with? And I'm just sort of talking in general to all the participants, rhetorically, of course, because I'm not going to get an answer, but still, these are the things that come to my mind. Give me a success story, or just give me a story. Give me a story of a specific project you worked on and how you implemented these principles, practices, whatever, and just walk me through it. That's all I really want as a grounding point for what we're talking about. That's what I would love to hear. I'd love to hear about how you went to this neighborhood and you engaged with the people in that neighborhood and you discovered that in whatever metaphysical way, certain people were not part of that conversation. And then you went to those people and you brought them into the conversation. Then you found out things you didn't know before. And then you did this, and this. And then these are the steps you took to attempt to address the situation or alleviate the problem or something. I mean, one of you on the panel has to have such an example you can provide, right? Right?
And so when you talk about resources and creating that space, I think we really have to understand how do we go beyond the initial layers of who comes to the table to really ensure that the most marginalized voices and those who are hurting the most, that they also have a voice, and we also hear from those populations and individuals. Populations. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. There are so many elements that each of you spoke to that sort of actually lead into the next couple of questions. So
many elements of what? It was all buzzwords. It was all buzzwords and duplication, community engagement, authenticity, community engagement, table. Voices, table.
That we have. And so what I heard you all talk about was thinking about both process and outcome, that sometimes we become over-focused on the outcome and we forget that equity has to be built into the process as we go.
Well, Diamond said more of that than anybody else. Not so much. But yeah, okay, can you detail the process, or can you ask your guests to give details on the process?
There was this idea of centering really core principles and centering the voices of those who are impacted, thinking about inverting power dynamics, thinking about how things have historically been done, harm that has been done. So I want to sort of pull those two things apart. And the first thing that I want to invite you all to talk about is thinking about this piece about process versus outcome, or even just process and outcome. So equity work takes time and resources. And unfortunately, we often see community engagement models that ask community members to volunteer their time and resources.
That is kind of part of community whatever. If it's not your job, it's probably voluntary,
which is really antithetical to equity.
Wait, what? Volunteering is antithetical to equity. What?
So what are some of the ways?
Wait, what? I missed something. Hold on. Let's try that again.
Inverting power dynamics, thinking about how things have historically been done, harm that has been done. So I want to sort of pull those two things apart. And the first thing that I want to invite you all to talk about is thinking about this piece about process versus outcome, or even just process and outcome. So equity work takes time and resources. And unfortunately,
equity work takes time and resources.
Unfortunately, we often see community engagement models that ask community members to volunteer their time and resources, which is really antithetical to equity.
So community engagement models ask people to volunteer or donate their time and resources, which is antithetical to equity. Okay, so the only way to equity is through forced conscription?
So what are some of the ways to ensure that equity and inclusion are within this process of community engagement, are really embedded into it, are part of the process itself, and not just expect for these things to happen at the end, at the outcome?
How do you make people go along with your initiative? Is that if volunteering one's time and resources is antithetical to equity, then the only way to equity is through what? Like a draft? Like what? Am I missing something? Seriously.
So I'd like to invite Amy to speak to this first.
Okay.
Thanks, Towfiqu. I am so impressed with the work that Lumos has done with the county, and I'm taking notes.
Like what? I have no idea what any of these organizations are, or what they do, or what they've accomplished. Like, what has been done? What has been... Again, does anyone here have a success story they would like to share to show off the efficacy of their particular organization, their particular process, their particular strategy? Please, anybody?
On the process, and if, hopefully our audience will be able to see exactly how you went about full inclusion and compensation.
Compensation? Okay. But, okay, I would love to have some details.
And I think at Downtown Women's Center and our work in coalition, we've really evolved to make sure that we're creating space and opportunities for people with the closest proximity to the issues that we're working on, and a model of compensation around that.
Compensation, okay, what do you mean by compensation? I mean, I think paycheck, but maybe there's something else.
Where I'm really struggling as a leader is how to do that for our staff members too. Downtown Women's Center is really rooted in a model that we've labeled as shared leadership for years and years and years.
Shared leadership. That's usually called too many cooks in the kitchen.
Something I purposely chose Downtown Women's Center for when I came 9 years ago, and is really important to me. But I hear time and time again of how taxing it is to participate in these conversations and to lean in to the DEI work that everyone wants, the social justice work. But again and again, how hard it is and how it feels like it's on top of the work.
Yeah, almost like it's secondary and counterproductive and perhaps superfluous to everything else. Maybe.
And so I'm doing a lot of personal reflection, a lot of work together with my team on how to infuse it in the work.
Why hasn't, DEI initiatives and everything else have been around for many, many years now. I'm just surprised that there isn't at least a working boilerplate model for how to do these things in Organization X without too much heavy lifting. But listening to our speaker here, I feel like she's gone through a whole lot of stress and is currently very stressed by these things. Sometimes if there is something affecting you negatively, the proper thing to do is extract it from your life and not keep trying to make it work. Like a bad boyfriend or something. Just get that out of your life because it's causing you nothing but stress and negativity. But okay.
And not make it this like extra thing that we do in committee. But something that really gets folded in and really trying to shift what shared leadership means, not that it means extra work, but that it means that you see your feedback, your input, your contribution rolled out in our policies, in our programs, in our efforts, in our voice.
Well, okay. If everybody's a leader, then there is no leader. If there is not a final arbiter of what direction the organization shall take or what decisions shall be made, then nothing gets done. And if you set up an environment where everybody expects that their ideas, good, bad, or ridiculous, are going to be heard, accepted, and adopted, you're not going to get anywhere, and all you're going to do is end up causing a lot of animosity if ultimately you cannot accommodate everyone's needs, wants, and desires. I don't know all the details of your organization, but just your overview sounds unmanageable
in the community. So those are just some of my thoughts from that.
Okay.
Thank you, Amy. Anne, would you like to share some thoughts about this as well?
Sure, yeah. I have so many thoughts.
I do too. You and I are on the same page in that regard.
Just since the beginning of this, there's so many layers to all of this. And really,
yes.
What we're talking about is culture change, right? And
okay.
As others have mentioned, that's the long game. That doesn't happen overnight. It's building in these practices and continuing to do this work and moving forward, even when it seems like, sometimes things are moving backwards.
Okay. Again, what in a pie-in-the-sky utopian ideal would the culture look like that you were attempting to achieve? Name a process. Detail a process. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. You talk about processes. You talk about the work. I really hope someone actually tells me what is involved in a granular, down-to-earth, street-level view of the work. What does that look like? I get up in the morning to do my job as director of this organization. I have a client that is blah, and I need to get them to this stage in things. And this is what I do, and these are the steps I take. Here's a success story. I had a client who was X, and then we did this, and this, and now they are in a better place of Y. Something.
In my experience with the Speak Up program, there has been such an evolution around, I mean, even from the beginning, and I think this happens with so many people, the best of intentions, you have the best of intentions, you are centering the folks that are most impacted, you are giving a voice, you are giving a platform, all of these things. And still, there are many things that come up, along that journey. And there are things that cannot be dismissed, because if we are truly hoping to elevate and embed this work into this system, we have to pay attention to how that is impacting those folks that we are bringing into it. So,
okay, impact, authenticity, the work, voices. I wonder if any of our speakers can get through a segment without using any of those words at all. Because so far, I might as well have, like, equity panel discussion bingo. Which, I mean, that might actually have to be a thing.
So, yes, that has to do with compensation and all of those things. And it also has to do with the space that you create for them and the space that you allow them to create.
Is somebody taking notes? Because we should really create a bingo card for this. Okay. Space or safe space, authentic, the work, voices, table. How about table? Okay, we get all these key words going on. I mean, we'd already have like 12 bingos or something at this point, but still.
For this work, right? All of these things are things that have been, have come over time as at least for me, as I've done more of this work with individuals who are impacted. There's no question. I think we all know, I believe in this work, and I'm sure at least people on this call, that this is the work that we need to do. And still, I think what sometimes gets lost is the work that we need to do, like Amy said, within our organizations, within ourselves. I mean, to really
understand the impact.
To really, as we talk about with anti-racism work a lot, lean into the idea of discomfort and lean into the idea that we are part of the system, that we are hoping to change and dismantle. And there's an incredible amount of, stuff that comes up from that, right? And that is transferred as well, but truly becoming partners, I think, requires us, to compensate people financially and to also look at our practices of how we engage with people and how we provide support and agency and leadership opportunities for those folks.
Thank you.
Absolutely nothing. Weaver, do you take the red snapper or what's in the box? And I guess I chose the box because there was absolutely nothing of substance in there. Okay. Well, we're, let's see now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've had 5 speakers so far, and none of them have given us any actionable information or details on what they do, what they hope to achieve, and they've all used the same set of buzzwords, more or less. Okay, well, we have 1 speaker left of the panel before we get to more meaty questions, I suppose.
And I think, again, you're speaking to so many things that there are so many questions that we have here that all of these pieces are so interconnected. And what I'm hearing in this is that, yes, compensation is a very key part of this, but
okay. Well, no, I mean, Amy was the first one to bring up compensation, so only one of your 5 speakers so far. I mean, well, she was the first one to bring up compensation, but now, okay, what about compensation? That's a new thing. Where does that fit in? Where do you guys get your money from, I guess?
There's more to it than just compensation.
I would hope there's more to it than just compensation, because there's some kind of work or process or outcome that you guys are all conceivably, working towards with all of the work and the authenticity and the impact and the voices. Yeah.
As well, that this is really about redefining what power sharing really means.
What?
And really centering that and understanding that there is a historical context to the way that this has been done in the past, and that we want to shift those power dynamics.
Okay, well, how was it, whatever it is, done in the past, and what do you want to see it be doing now? I don't know why I continually become baffled and amazed by this, but it's seemingly it doesn't matter what group of individuals on any particular panel discussion on any particular subject that I look at over the years, and they're talking about something that sounds like it's a very specific subject, and yet it is like pulling teeth to have somebody bring up an active example, a success story, something wherein I did this and this was the outcome. There was one not too long ago that actually defied that whole thing. It was a panel on, diversity in the intelligence community. You guys remember this? This was just the most recent intelligence community one I did. And you went down the line of those people talking about neurodiversity. And then you got to the third guy or whatever, and he's like, yeah, so this is what we did. We hired people on the basis of these traits, and then they did this, and this, and these are the outcomes we had. And do you remember this? I was floored. I was so happy. This guy actually gave a functional, active example of what was being talked about and discussed how it led to a success. It led to an advancement in his own business and in the outcomes thereof, and he was very specific. He talked about the programs they did, how they hired people, how they managed their employees to get these outcomes, etc. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check back on my YouTube channel a few weeks, and you'll see like a couple of, James Bond-ish looking figures on a thumbnail. And I was like, oh my god, and that's how rare it is. I get excited when that happens because I have something I can I have some footing on my climbing the mountain of what they're talking about. And so far, after 5 speakers, nothing. Okay, is 6th time going to be the charm? I don't know.
As, or flip them, as Andrea was speaking to. And so I want to sort of move this into our next question, which is a little bit more about thinking about this idea of harm repair. Or just...
Why didn't you let the other guy answer one of those questions? You haven't had... Okay.
Even harm that has been done. And so engaging community members in a process with an institution like DHS, which has historically caused harm to certain communities, can present certain challenges.
Right.
So what are some of the ways, first, that we can start to rebuild relationships and reestablish trust with communities that have been historically harmed and marginalized? So I'd like to start there, and would like to welcome Diamond to begin by speaking to.
Well, what about this guy? He hasn't had a chance to say anything yet. Why? She's already had a chance to talk. What about him? Did I miss something? What? Why not give this guy a chance to speak? I mean, you were doing a good job so far, sort of going around the panel, giving each person an opportunity, and now this guy's he gets skipped over, and now you're back over here again? Did you forget about him?
This.
I just have so much gratitude, and I'm feeling like flooded with emotions, and like I'm really appreciating this conversation.
Okay, I'm glad you're getting something out of it.
And it's really making me reflect on like my time with the RAC. T and I work on that together, the Reentry Health Advisory Collaborative. And I don't know that there's any one way, I think acknowledgement and...
You're right. There's no one way. There's no magic bullet. She's asking for some of the ways. Like, okay, just for the sake of argument, and because I've heard so many horror stories in the past, in true crime podcasts and otherwise, that social services often have, the term falling through the cracks, whether it's families or children or victims of abuse or whatever else, right? Department of Health and Human Services, or, if that's what she's talking about. Okay. DHS. Right. Okay. So, I'm guessing we're not talking about the Department of Homeland Security. I'm assuming it's like a health services kind of thing. Okay. Yes, it is difficult to trust organizations in general that fall within that because they are understaffed and underfunded classically. It's a bureaucracy. There's a whole bunch of statutes and rules and conditions and this, that, and the other. And it's easy for people who are genuinely suffering or genuinely in danger to end up not receiving the attention or resources they require to, survive and thrive. Okay? So, accepting that for the moment, yes, how does an organization that has classically failed in many instances, not all the time, but enough times and dramatic enough to make them an untrusted organization, how do you reestablish trust in that organization with any particular community or whatever? I mean, there's no one answer. You're right. What is one thing that such an organization, such a department can do to work towards reestablishing trust? You got... Tell me you have at least one idea.
Validation is extremely important. I'm appreciating this piece around, like, it's not just about compensation, because the RAC they're compensated,
what?
right?
What? We're not, no. We're not talking about your paycheck. She asked, how does an organization like DHS reestablish trust with a community that has historically been harmed by their action and or inaction, effectively? No, nobody's talking about paychecks. She didn't ask about paychecks.
Compensated well, but what they're thinking they have to produce in relation to what the institution gives them, it's like, no. Consultants make $200 an hour, right? You don't have to go to every single meeting and do all, like, if we're breaking it up, right, on a consultant hourly rate, actually you're providing over and beyond, right?
Okay, I'm trying to be very generous here and say that we're working towards something like you have to compensate the people doing the job in order to get a more effective outcome. Is that it? You in order to reestablish trust between DHS and communities, you have to make sure that the people working for DHS are appropriately compensated. Is that... I mean, and I would tend to agree, understaffed, underfunded. That's always sort of the poison pills for an effective social safety net in those regards. Okay, is that what you mean? I'm trying really hard to be generous here to whatever she's talking about, because I'm not hearing steps to reestablish trust. But yeah.
So, like, being able to break down, like, what it means for you to show up and just be enough and listen and share your voice and validate that. It can feel really hard to be in a conversation as the only or one of few community stakeholders with all, county correctional health, probation, like, that's hard, and so just being available to that and validating that constantly. And then again, as what's been lifted up already, creating space for the acknowledgement and not just trying to create solutions all the time. That's the healing work that needs to happen, right? It's like,
was something cut? Did I miss a question? What are you talking about? She asked, how does an organization that has classically failed certain communities reestablish trust with those communities? That's what she asked. What are you talking about?
Yes, folks can show up in the space. Yes, they can speak up. But what does that feel like?
What?
Let's talk about it. And so we try to create space around that, of like, let's talk about like what it feels like to be in the space and not feel like you're being heard, to feel like the content is not, it's a bunch of data that's not reflective of what you're actually experiencing. Like, and they're not listening.
What? Listening to what? Who are they? What? I'm trying really hard here, guys. I am really...
So that has been a part of the change work, just the validation of experience. The
validation of experience. That's your answer. Validation of experience. I tell you a story and you say, I believe you. That's, I mean, I guess that could be profound depending on the circumstances. What does that have to do? So, DHS needs to validate experience in order to establish trust or reestablish trust. Is that what you're saying? What does that look like? What does validating someone's experience look like? I mean, I'm assuming, and obviously I could be setting myself up for failure here myself, I am assuming it is something more than someone tells me a story and I say, I believe you, right? Or is it?
The validation of we are enough. The validation of no, it's not us, it's them.
What? The validation of no, it's not us, it's them. About what? What? It's just... What are we talking about? It's not us, it's them. I'm not the problem, they are. Well, what's the circumstance? What's the context? What do you mean? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you, Diamond. Andrea, I wonder if you'd like to speak.
This guy hasn't had a chance to talk yet. What? Give him a shot, would you? Diamond already spoke. Andrea already spoke. What? Is this guy just nothing? What is going on?
Speak to this as well.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. And Diamond, thank you for your remarks. I echo, just the appreciation for the conversation and being in this space and agree absolutely. I mean, the first step is to acknowledge the harm and to know that and to acknowledge that in spaces. And then I think there are a number of ways in which you can repair that harm. But
Okay. There are a number of ways in which you can repair that harm, okay? Name one.
I think it all requires time. Sometimes it involves, you can involve resources, but it is about rebuilding that trust.
Yes, and one of the first steps towards doing that, in your opinion, would be...
And I think so this is all interwoven because it is about the resourcing, and the resourcing is definitely that compensation piece.
Why is everybody talking about their paychecks? I mean, okay, again, if underfunding, right, or not paying people a livable wage to do this work is a problem, okay, I could understand that. But that's not the question at hand. The question at hand is, okay, in a perfect world where everybody's compensated effectively, what steps do you take to reestablish trust? What steps do you take to repair harm? Can you name one of those steps? Setting aside your paycheck for a second. Please.
But it's more than that, as you mentioned. It's how do we not only ask people to come to the table around our issues, but then how do we support community and show up not just with money or compensation, but with our time and our support.
Well, if you're giving over your time and your support, then you have to be compensated, because if you're not compensated, that's antithetical to equity, because volunteering your time and resources is bad, right? And we have to come to the table. And who comes to the table? What voices aren't being heard that are being most impacted by, I could do this? What?
And whatever the Office of Violence Prevention.
Okay, all this jumping and cutting back and forth, that's the result of the recording. That's not me. I didn't do any editing on this. So whatever glitches are happening, that's just part of the original.
We have data, we have connections to other partners. So it's bringing all those resources to support the community. And so it's about compensation at the individual. It's about addressing systems and policies and practices that have been harmful and working alongside community to change those. Even hiring and contracting practices, how do we work alongside to show really that we're working alongside, we're showing up.
What practice Name a practice, name a process, and then detail it. Working alongside process to work alongside process to dedicate resources to the table and the impact. Good Lord.
Not for community, but also around issues that are important to community, not just ours. It's understanding how we, especially as county governments, we have all of these initiatives and people get tapped into and we fragment that. And so it's figuring out how do we...
I am this guy right now. Okay, everything else, my mind is this guy. I am leaning on my hand. I am looking bored and detached as possible, right? This is me right now. And I feel sorry for this guy because whatever else he has to say, even if it's as opaque as everyone else has been so far, why isn't he being given an opportunity to speak? Why did you skip him and go back to the start of the list again? If Amy is the next speaker, or sorry, if Angel is the next speaker after Andrea here, and you don't give this guy some time, I would, if I was this guy, I'd feel insulted. Regardless of what I have to say or contribute here, I would feel absolutely insulted that I gave my time to come on this panel, and I've been skipped over. But anyway, okay, tell me more about the process and the engagement and the table and the impact and the voices and the work.
We do community engagement in a way that is more coordinated or more respectful of people's time and abilities and capacity. That isn't a response to our siloed ways of doing work, but really understanding from community perspective. So I think, repairing harm is in so many ways, it's about building relationships. It's about the long term. And I will say this last piece is it's about the transparency, the accountability.
Transparency? Have you listened to yourself for the last couple of minutes?
And the communication, and that's where the comment Anne about how and Amy about looking internally, there's so many ways to look internally, but if we too are stretched and we're investing in a piecemeal way and we don't have the consistency of communicating beyond an initiative of being and really with community through the long term, and how we communicate back, whether it's hard because something that was provided input didn't happen, so we have to acknowledge that, or it did happen and we need to show that. And so there's so many pieces to this, but again, it boils down to the relationship, and it's how do we show up really truly authentically and provide support and compensation, but give of our time and our focus, and as well as any kind of financial remuneration or compensation other supports that we might be able to provide.
You're just saying things now. Come on, really? Good grief. 7 professionals. 7 people who have spent years of their lives in their various organizations and efforts and everything else, and given an open platform with no restrictions to talk about what it is that they do and how they want things to improve, what problems that they see exist. And have we had a single active, specific example in 25 minutes of this thing? At all? Or has it just been the same litany of buzzwords and catchphrases? This is honestly incredible. I don't know if it's just like each individual feeding off of the vocabulary of the next to try to sound like they're part of the conversation, or if this is just normal shop talk. But it's, man.
Thank you so much.
Don't go to Amy. Don't go to Amy. Or, sorry, Angel. Don't go to Angel. Don't go to Amy. Don't go to Anne. Very alphabetical here. Go to this guy. Him. Go to him.
And I heard in what you shared, I also heard an echoing of some of the things that Angel had mentioned at the beginning.
No. What? Is this guy a leper or something? Why aren't you giving him the floor? He should have twice the amount of time as everybody else so far because you've ignored him completely.
One of which is that we're centering these core principles, and you name transparency, communication.
Centering core, what does that mean? What are you God. Centering core principles. Why not just give us an example of how what you do was effective, or even a story of failure? Because lessons can be learned from failure. Anything other than more buzzwords, please.
And accountability. And then also this piece around humanizing community, humanizing ourselves in this work. So understanding that we are multifaceted beings, and that we bring our whole selves to this work.
Our whole selves. Oh, thank goodness. I wasn't sure. We were talking about authenticity. I was wondering if we're going to bring our whole selves to work. Well, here we are.
And to really acknowledge that. And so, Angel, I'm actually wondering if there's anything else that you want to add here about how community engagement can promote and advance harm repair.
Yeah, well, that was the question you asked earlier that nobody answered. So do you think Angel's going to give us the answer finally? What is something that community engagement can do to advance harm repair, reestablish trust? Got something for us, Angel?
I think, to be able to promote and advance harm repair, it's also, I think one is an acknowledgement of it in itself.
Okay. Acknowledging the harm that was done, okay, and not glossing over it. I'm really reaching here, but okay, yes. How would you do that? What steps would you take to acknowledge the harm? I'm assuming it's something more than representative of organization comes up to community meeting and says, hey guys, my bad. I'm assuming it's something more than that, right?
And it's also taking ownership of what those mistakes are.
Yes, that would be kind of entwined with the whole acknowledgement part, because you say, we messed up, and here's how we're going to fix that. And I hope you'll work with us to try to move to a better place, to try to undo or at least redress the harm that was done. Yes. Acknowledgement also involves owning up to one's responsibility. Okay? All right. Do you have an example? Do you have a wish list? Like, I would love it if DHS would do X. I wish they would acknowledge this. Something?
I think at no way or at any capacity, should we not allow for ourselves to listen to each other, to say, hey, like, this is, I made this mistake and this is how it took place, right? And that it could be as simple as the conversations that we create, whether they're one-on-one or whether they're at the table with leadership.
Yes, in some way, shape, or form, you're going to have to address the people involved in the harmed community, whether it be representatives or in some town hall kind of thing, and say, hey, I come from organization blah, and historically we've done these things that have ended up not working correctly and caused a lot of harm, and I'm here and I'm dedicated to attempting to redress and fix these problems, but I cannot do it without your help, and I need to hear from you what I can do, or what we can do together to try to repair this. Yes, okay, that would be, in generalized terms, a way in which you could start trying to reestablish trust. Of course, you have to follow through. It's one thing to say you're going to do these things. You have to then, try to follow through with that. Or if you run into problems, be transparent with the people you are working with about those problems. Right? So they understand that you're doing your best, but there are some things that can't be overcome or require more time or something else. Yes, okay. Engagement, communication, transparency, honesty, yes.
And then it's saying, how are we also not functioning in a vacuum where we're allowing the spaces that are created flourish with those that were already harmed,
what?
right? And also to ensure that we as a system, because I do think that, you know, as we look at a system of healthcare, or we are looking at a system of community and as groups, show up with as Andrea shared, with the authenticity and the genuine respect for centering justice, right? Because that's where harm came from, right? We need to acknowledge that the harm was done. There was an injustice done.
Yes, I think that goes hand in hand with the whole acknowledging harm. I think harm and injustice are relatively synonymous in this context, so you're not...
And when we center justice, we then begin to look at the different layers of where all those injustices sit.
Layers.
And we're not going to be able to do them all at one time, right? There's no hurry, because, I mean, there's an urgency at
There's no hurry, but there's an urgency.
Times, right? But I think the hurry is also part of this outcome driven, right? What? Repairing harm. There's not an outcome for repairing harm.
There's not an outcome for repairing harm. I come to the doctor with a broken arm. Doctor, repair this harm. There's no outcome for repairing harm. You'll just have to live with your broken arm. What are you... Okay, there's no outcome for repairing harm. You mean aside from repairing the harm?
Right. There's justice that needs to be done, right? So...
Well, is justice not addressing the injustice? Is justice not an outcome to repairing harm? Am I taking crazy pills here?
That takes time. So I think part of that is, as I said, the acknowledgement, taking ownership, having those hard conversations,
sure,
and then ultimately centering those conversations around justice.
Okay, again, I'm being very generous here. Yes. In order to start rebuilding trust with a person, a community, whatever, in which something has been done incorrectly or harmful or unfairly, you have to come forward and be honest about the responsibility you hold, either as an individual or as representative of the organization, to the harm previously done, list off those things, take ownership, and then say, I'm here to attempt to fix these things with your help. Let's work together. Here's our goals. Here are our obstacles. Is there anything on this list of goals that you think needs to be added or changed? Do you have any ideas about how to overcome some of these obstacles? Let us speak and think together. Very classic, simple setup of acknowledgement, redress, and negotiation, all being transparent, right? Now, of course, the proof is in the pudding of actually affecting the change that you list down or working towards those things and having regular status reports of this is the goal, this was our difficulty, here's where we are now versus where we were. I am not a community organizer. I don't even have a business degree. I'm not a diplomat, anything else, but I can conceptualize the basics of such a thing very quickly. And yet somehow, throughout 5 of the 6 speakers, and setting aside the moderator, why hasn't anything that concise or concrete been said yet? Why is it all of this word verbiage? Just nonsense, just babble. And why hasn't this guy been given a chance to talk? Tell me he's next. You have disregarded him. If you go right back to Amy again, go through the loop again and go right back to Amy, I mean, there's no consequence for it, obviously. It's just more evidence that for some reason this guy doesn't matter to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I want to open this question up to any of you.
No! See? What is your problem with this guy? You go around and a half to everybody in the exact same order, and you skip this guy entirely. Jeez. You know, it would have been worse. It would have been worse if he'd gone to Amy and then Anne again and then gone to everybody. That would have been worse. But holy cats, seriously?
Actually, who have something that you'd like to share a little bit more about this, about building relationships, rebuilding trust.
This is your chance, dude. Just speak up. Just cut in. Do not wait for anybody else. You have earned the right to interrupt. Cut in and say something, please. I do want to hear from everyone on this panel before this thing's over with.
Arma Parent Anne?
No, you don't ask. No, you don't open up to everybody and then say Anne. All right. You don't say, I want to open this question up to everybody, and then you say someone's name. You're not... Oh, jeez, man.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything.
You agree with everything? Then why are you here? You might as well take a powder. Who cares? You got nothing new to offer? You don't have any counterpoints? Nothing?
You know, everyone has said and
You agree with everything everyone has said? Everything. Okay, so let me just get this straight. 4 other people from 4 other different organizations with 4 other lived experiences, etc., have said things, and you have no questions. You have no addendums. You have no counterpoint. Nothing. Everything everybody said I agree with. Okay, let's move on. How about give this guy a chance to say something? Maybe he'll say something that you disagree with, or something that you can relate to and discuss, an actual discussion. How about give him a chance? If you've got nothing new to add or say, then hey, let's move on to the next guy. This guy!
And from my own experience, what has been super important to me and what I see as, you know, extension of what we've discussed is just this very strong inability for us to self-interrogate, right?
What?
I mean, we talk about self-reflection, we talk about, you know, repair.
Oh yeah, well I did a whole stream on reflective practices earlier, or self-reflective practices. So yeah, I know all about self-reflective practices. So what? And
yet there is still this resistance to, like what Angel was saying about, you know, transparently saying, I was wrong, you know?
Yeah, no, it is difficult to admit when one is wrong. Yeah, it takes a certain amount of, you know, ego fortitude to look at a situation, say you made a mistake, and own up to that mistake. It is not an easy thing to do. It is the adult thing to do, right? It is the rational thing to do. Yes, no, it is often difficult to admit fault. Yes, okay. And?
You know, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
And you cannot move from that mistake to any resolution until you come to that place. And
yes, he said that. He said acknowledgement, which is absolutely true. If you're going to try to repair a broken trust, you have to acknowledge mistakes made and own them. You're not adding anything to the quote-unquote discussion. Do you have anything you'd like to add? If not, let's move on to the guy who's been left out so far.
And are able to do that. And our culture in general is not, it's a white supremacist culture. It's
Oh, it is? Oh, it's a white supremacist culture. Oh, okay. And so what does that have to do with not acknowledging fault?
Corporate culture, it does not, you know, heed that kind of transparency.
Oh, there's no transparency for mistakes made? Well, I guess it depends on who we're talking about. Okay, well, has Joe Biden been transparent about all the mistakes he's made? No. Has Donald Trump been transparent about all the mistakes he made? No. Has Barack Obama been transparent about all the mistakes he made? No. Oh, wait. White supremacy, right? It's all about white supremacy. It's not a human thing. It's not a thing that people do because of ego and psychology. Oh, it's a white supremacist thing. Oh, okay. You know, because no one in China ever has a problem with admitting a mistake, right? That the Chinese government is always transparent. right? Because, no white supremacy there, right? All the systems and departments and everything in India are always transparent. They never hold back from admitting a mistake, right? No white supremacy there. Every other country on the planet that is not run by or populated in majority by white people, they're just perfect transparency. Everybody's honest. As long as they're not the wrong skin color, they're honest. Right? What?
And that is the sort of thing that we must, continue to break down in order to do this work. And
right.
There have been
How are you breaking down white supremacy? Tell me what steps you take every day to break down white supremacy. What I'd love to know. Got 10 minutes left in my time. Tell me.
So many times in the last 10 years that I've said to myself because of something that has happened. I know it's fine. You will make mistakes. You take risks. We all do that. That's part of it. But if you know that something is not okay or is not a risk that you want to take or you feel is inappropriate, there have been a lot of times where I've said to myself, we should not do this.
What?
It's not about, I do think that there is some level of trend that's that's happening where people are very much engaged with and understanding that centering those impacted is, in alignment with equity, racial equity, housing equity, all of those things.
Absolutely nothing. Nonsense. Words. You're saying words.
And I think that there is,
No, I don't know. I don't know what you are saying. I don't know what you think.
Less of an understanding, as we were talking about how to do that in an intentional way.
Do what?
That does not cause more harm.
Do that in an intentional... What center... I've completely lost whatever this line of thinking is.
And, being willing to devote those resources, especially time and energy and emotional energy.
Yes, the emotional labor of this difficult work.
That is required to do that work.
Yes.
And which is really, important. It's a big, it feels like a lot, but compared to what we have,
a lot of
it
what?
really is not. And, but we just,
they changed the order around. They switched Amy with this guy, and I keep saying this guy because I heard her say his name once, and I think, is this his last name or something? I feel like part of his name is cut off or something. I don't know. She said his name, but anyway. Does he ever speak? I don't want to do a part 2 just to find out if this guy talks, but man, I feel like this guy's gotten the short end of the stick on this one.
We just haven't gotten to the point where we're willing to do that. And I just would love to see that change.
Thank you, Anne. And Tway, would you like to speak to
Oh, finally! Okay, well, I got to give a minute or 3 here to this guy because finally, you realize that you skipped him over. Would you like to talk about this? Talk about what? I don't even know what we're talking about anymore, but hey, let's listen to this guy.
Yes, so when we think about Gipan, I think we have to think about where it started from.
Yeah.
And I think most of the decision making came from the leadership level on top. And that's how all the decision making that's impact the community. And so that is how the people on the bottom, the marginalized community affecting, and that is how all the issues started off. And so for us, part of being, we represent our community. And so we look at it as like, okay, we have to figure out where the problem came from. And we have to listen to the people that's causing all this, raising all the issue. And we have to help them and reach to the top level and let them know, hey, this issue here came from the decision making that from you guys and how it's impacting our community right here. And so that's how we have to let them know it's caused a lot of problem. And so we have to help those can be able to raise in their voice. And so that's so important. And so
okay, so yes, if the administration of an organization is so detached from the work that they're doing that they don't know what's been happening or who's doing what, everything else, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, yes, they need to be either artificially or literally brought to the people that they're supposed to be helping and actually interact with them or discuss things and not just keep like this ivory tower thing going on, okay? I'm being as generous as I can because this guy has been shunned practically this entire talk.
I think that this whole process is not just helping people that bring all the hosts that within our community, but also we help them provide a lot of valuable resources and allow them to come to the listening session and speak on the behalf of what they want to say. That's how it's.
Okay, well, I'm running up against my own clock, so I'm going to stop there. We've gotten halfway through this hour-long presentation, and I know as much about the whole concept as I did when I began. Just reading the title of the presentation, I could just, go to a thesaurus, find different words to represent each word in the title, and then just take that big jumble full of words and say them, and I'd probably get just as much information about what all of these people are doing or talking about as I have by listening to it. I'm honestly a bit flabbergasted, not only by this guy getting shunned the whole time, but also by just the absolute repetition of words and phrases without meaning or context, and absolutely nothing being advanced. No knowledge was advanced in the course of this half an hour of listening to this group of decades-long professionals in some cases. I mean, why couldn't I hear, at the blah blah center, we had a client who did this, and we worked with them to do that, and now they are here, whereas before they were there. In figurative terms, I would kill for an anecdote at this point. Anyway, let's take a couple minutes to see what you guys have to say, and then we will wrap things up. Keeverdam, he should have given 10 consecutive minutes to speak to compensate for being north. Yeah. If this was a mistake on the moderator's part, if she skipped him by accident, she should have realized that as soon as she got back around to Diamond, and she should have said, whoops. But she went through Diamond, and then Andrea, and then Angel again, and then up to Anne, skipping Amy, and then finally got to this guy. Like, I'm going to open this up to everybody. Then I'm going to name someone in particular. Anyway. Good gravy. Let's see. TC, so many words to say absolutely nothing at all. And this is the frustrating. I mean, there's a lot of comedy here, obviously. Sort of cynical, mind-breaking comedy over the course of this. But it's also ridiculously disappointing to me, as so many of these things have been in the past. I want to actually hear, good, bad, or indifferent, some information I did not have before starting. I want to hear what it means to engage with the community in order to advance equity. I want to know, when I hear things like that, I want to have some concept of what that looks like, of what the people that do that kind of work actually do. So I can at least be able to assess it in my own mind as to, does that make sense to me? Are there flaws with the reasoning behind it? Or, them to say this was successful and then go look it up and see how successful was it? But there's nothing there. Vera Vashmai, this is quite the collection of grifters. One person buzzwords, the next person agrees, then says the same buzzwords. One guy gets paid without talking at all, and they get to say when the job is done. I mean, Look, I got to imagine that working in a women's crisis organization or shelter, whatever, like Amy, let's say, that cannot be easy work. That cannot be emotionally satisfying work all the time. That's got to be rough, right? And I just want to, as I wrap things up, I have no idea, and it's obviously no thanks to this panel discussion, I have no idea what actual beneficial work any of these individuals actually do in their jobs. I can imagine that they do a lot of good for a lot of people, depending on what we're talking about. It would have been nice to hear about some of that as it relates to the subject at hand. But not a single one of them gave us that. So I don't know. All I know is that they are mouthpieces for buzzwords, buzz phrases, and abstractions while complaining about compensation. So a lot of it comes across as very mercenary, which is unfortunate because I'm sure that there's a lot of stuff these people have done that have helped people out of the goodness of their heart and intentions. But all I got was buzzword, 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 compensation, compensation, buzzword, buzzword, compensation. Scanner Daphne, it's almost like it is meaningless jabber to justify a check for a person not qualified for a real job. That's the impression that is brought across. In my heart of hearts, in my idealism, I hope that is not the case. But this was a bad showcase for whatever they had to say about whatever. This is a bad way to showcase it. Faithless. No, they do not. They are all frauds. I can't say that. I only have the information to go on that I'm presented with. And in this context, in this discussion, not a lot was there. But like I say, fingers crossed, heart of hearts, benefit of the doubt. It's not all just buzzwords and waiting for a paycheck. I know, maybe I'm just being forcefully naive here, but I really hope that's not the case. Anyway, everyone, I'm going to wrap this up here to make sure I stay within my margin of time frame. I do not think I'll be doing a part 2. I'm not quite sure what could be accomplished with more of the same, because if their best game in the first half of this was this, I can't imagine the latter half is going to be all that much more improved. So, we'll see, but probably not. Either way, I thank you all for joining me for this Sunday stream and attempting to understand something I didn't understand before I started and still don't understand as I go, which means I'll just have to find another one of these in the future and give them a shot. If you'd like to hear more from me, you can find me here every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for a new episode of TED Excellence, where I'll take a look at a off-brand TED Talk for enjoyment and enlightenment. I call it enjoyment. Enjoyment? Enjoyment. I'll have to go after this and enjoy a mint or something. Either way, everyone, thank you for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated, thank you so much for your generosity. Sorry, I had to take a mental breath there for a second after this. Everyone who donated, either to myself or to the GoFundMe's pinned to the top of the chat box, thank you guys so much for your generosity. Really do appreciate it. I hope you all have a good rest of your Sunday. I hope you all have a good rest of your weekend. Your 3-day weekend, if you're lucky enough to have it here in America. I hope you're all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon, and I will see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.